And now we get onto the American remake known as Quarantine. I don't really have much to say about this one because 90% of the film is the same as the original. Like, it's even more shot for shot than I was expecting, to the point where they literally recreate the sets to make them look identical to the original set. But there are a few things they changed, some of which I like, some of which I really don't. I like the more humorous scenes at the beginning of Angela joking around with the firemen. These scenes are enjoyable to watch and definitely add a lot more character development to these characters. The only problem being most of the characters we meet in the opening disappear during the film or get killed off so early that you never really have time to care about them when they go. I also like the implied relationship between Angela and Scott, the cameraman. It definitely adds a little bit of emotional depth to it, although not enough to make this movie really stand out. The rest of the changes are not really good. The pacing of the film is definitely not as good as the original. I didn't find the film as tense and scary as the original, and a lot of that has to do with how they shot the film. They of course shot this film much more professionally and it had a higher budget, but that professional look to the film definitely takes out a lot of the realism. The original Wreck felt like it was the raw, unedited footage from the camera, whereas this film is highly edited. The colouring was affected so much, it's really hard for me to look at the film and really see it as something real. It just looks so fake and that definitely takes me out. Plus they intentionally tried to give the building a grittier and darker look, probably to make it creepier, but it doesn't really work. The original was pretty terrifying because it looked real. Like, it was set in a normal place to look like any normal apartment building that you could find, but this building seems to be perfectly dark and gothic, and that really ruined the film for me. Plus the film is so dark that half the time I had no clue what was happening. Plus the scares in this movie are nearly all jump scares, something that you'll probably know I'm not a big fan of in horror movies because they're just so lazy. The jump scares in the original were effective because a lot of them were unexpected and they were never false scares. The scares in this film are so predictable, and also there are multiple false scares where a fucking cat or a dog jumps out. There are a few small changes to the story as well, which are kind of pointless because they don't really add anything, and the ending is nowhere near as creepy and unnerving as the original. But if there's one thing that I can really praise about this film, it's Jennifer Carpenter's performance. Dexter is my favourite show ever, and she is fantastic in that show, so I was so excited to see her in this film, and she is just fantastic. Although I prefer Manuela Velasco, she is still really damn good. Honestly, if the original didn't exist, I would think this was a better movie. As a standalone movie, it's a pretty good movie. It's really well directed and there is a lot of atmosphere, which I think would have creeped me out even more if I hadn't basically seen it done before, but much better. Director John Eric Dowdle also directed the found footage movies, the Poughkeepsie tapes, which I've heard good things about, and As Above So Below, which I thought was a pretty good movie and I'll probably review during October. Overall, this isn't a terrible remake, but it's way too similar to the original to make me recommend it. Seriously, just watch the original, it's much scarier. I give Quarantine a 6.5 out of 10.